It's been 3 months since I played Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and it still lives in my head rent-free. Expedition 33 brought me a unique, inimitable experience that almost single-handedly healed my relationship with gaming, but that's almost entirely a different thing. Regardless, in pretty much every way, the game is just phenomenal, and everyone who's played it can agree. From the gameplay to the graphics, to the art direction and music, the world building, and of course, its writing. Expedition 33's story is so poignant in its themes and potent in its delivery that it allows players to become fully absorbed in what the game wants you to experience. However, this story is one that I personally won't be able to experience the same way ever again. In fact, I'm not even sure I'd be able to replay the entire experience for myself at all. You see, when I did my playthrough live on stream and it came to Act 3, I asked my chat if there were any side quests I should do in their opinion before finishing it in Lumiere. I was 100% ready to get to the end of the main quest and go straight to Lumiere, but upon chat's input, I did Alicia's side quest, was glad I did it, and then made my way to the final fight. Then I reached the ending. First, I chose Mael, then went to the pre-ending save and chose Verso purely out of curiosity. And I knew I could technically go back again and do some other side quest completionist content, but after seeing even just one ending, I wasn't sure I could really throw myself back into the game anymore, much less after seeing both. This might come as a surprise if you're someone that's played the game again and again, especially considering it's such a highly acclaimed game that you'd think it deserves to be replayed over and over again. But hear me out. Even if you fundamentally disagree with me on this feeling, you might resonate with some of my reasons why. There are two big reasons I can pinpoint as to why I cannot see myself replaying Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And the first reason, and perhaps the more objective and critical one, is the suspension of disbelief, or the inability to keep it suspended past certain points in the story. Playing through the acts of Expedition 33 is like peeling back layers of an onion, only to discover an orange inside. And then you peel that, but instead of an orange, there's a Ferrero chocolate. And you know how those have a nut at their center? Well, instead of finding a nut, you find a gold nugget with your shocked, tear-stained reflection staring back at you. Now you could rewrap the gold in chocolate, and that in orange, and that in onion, but if you try to repeat the unwrapping process from the start, the thrill and surprise are gone. You now know what exactly you'll find, but finding the next inner layer definitely doesn't feel the same as the first time. You can no longer fool yourself into knowing that the onion is just an onion, and that no orange or chocolate exists inside it. I'll explain what I mean with more specific story points, but be warned that here on out is very much a spoiler-heavy zone. If you haven't finished the game yet, this is not a safe space. The story of Expedition 33 has several turning points from which you feel like you just can't go back. Sometimes it's because of the pure shock and emotion of these points. The shock of finding out that inside the onion is an orange. The earliest example of this is at the end of the prologue, which shows us Sophie and the gommage. Now let's be real, many of us probably saw that one coming. The death flags were the most apparent here. Everyone knew what was coming and why they were at the harbor, except for us, the player, who was just learning about it as we went along. We were playing as Gustav, but even he knew what was up. It was just the duty of the writers to make the dialogue talk about the thing without ever actually mentioning the thing, until it was time to. That didn't make it any less emotional to see Sophie disappear. It's one thing seeing NPCs get Thanos'd, but watching Sophie turn into dust and disintegrate into the air was like seeing Tom Holland get snapped. It's up close, it's personal, and it's painful. It also sets the tone for the rest of the story. But the moment that really takes the cake when it comes to shock value is Gustav's death. I still remember my utter disbelief when it happened, and I held on to the hope that someone would be able to heal what had to be a non-fatal wound surely, and then he just dropped dead. This is the first game I've played that chose to kill off its primary, or first, I guess, protagonist. And from what I can tell online, most people were able to avoid the spoiler of his death because there's a litany of reactions to the ending of Act 1. But others were able to guess it would happen due to his skill tree being locked. I actually learned from looking at online reactions that this event made a lot of people stop playing Clair Obscur at this point. I truly didn't realize how controversial Gustav's death was to players, whether because of the fact that it happened or because it it happened so unceremoniously too, just for him to be replaced so quickly by Verso, who we knew nothing about. It certainly was a risky move on the writer's part, and upon finishing the story, Gustav's death thematically and plot-wise made sense. But again, that doesn't make it hurt less, not when he's this truly hopeful character in such a hopeless situation. But his death is also an example of another effect of such moments, aside from the shock of it happening, is the knowledge that it happens. This might seem like pointing out the obvious, but even just knowing that Gustav dies makes it enormously difficult, nigh impossible actually, to suspend the disbelief and recreate the fresh, unknowing mind that came into this game blind the first time and start off the story again as him. No longer can you match the carefree, idealist spirit that Gustav brings to the team when you consider his impending doom. And knowing that he'll die, for me, just evokes a sense of emptiness and sadness were I to try playing through his act again, knowing that there's no happy ending for him, not even for him to stay alive and get further character development. As a side note, this is a pretty on-the-nose way for the writers to make us feel the grief hard in a story all about grief. I mean, after his death, we truly grieve him. Through Mael, through the team, and as players. Very show don't tell type. We get another moment like this when the entire canvas world gets deleted. This time it's not just Gustav who's killed, oh no, it's the entire team, including our dear Mael, and their whole world is gone too, literally. And I'm not trying to reduce Expedition 33's effective writing as just effective shock value. There are a plethora of other things that show off the team's writing prowess, but it's undeniably one of the many great elements that E33 uses to make such a strong and memorable experience. Anyway, that moment also happens simultaneously with the explanation in Alicia's letter about the Desandre family, and that Lumiere is a canvas world. To be honest, I still remember the exhilaration of that scene, going from celebration to revelation to disintegration. But considering this moment now, like with Gustav's death, I'm again struck with the sense of, I can't replay this. I know too much. Many good stories have plot twists in the form of revelations. In some, you discover the true motive of the villain. In others, you discover that your ally was actually your enemy all along, or vice versa. And occasionally, you discover that the world you knew was just a fictional creation by real people, or at least real in the sense of the story. These revelations range from enlightening to absolutely mind-blowing. And when you have revelations that are pulled off so well and written with great layers to actually be mind-blowing, it's hard to go back to your pre-mind-blown state. Playing Expedition 33 again, knowing that it's a canvas world, will put me in a mindset of analyzing every nook and cranny of the world to figure out how it reflects its canvasness and parallels its creators. And while there's a certain enjoyment in that, in fact, I'm sure a lot of you will want to replay the game again just to be able to notice the things you didn't notice before knowing, it's a far cry from experiencing it as the game's true reality and treating it, believing it as such. It'll just never be the same. You can say that for a lot of things, but it has such an immense impact with this game. More than knowing is the joy of the discovery process in Clair Obscur, because not only were the revelations brilliant, but so were the moments that led us there. I remember first wondering if Lumiere was in a pocket dimension when fighting the Paintress, because she did the move that ripped open the sky. It looked like there could be a different reality beyond that. That wasn't confirmed until later, though, and feeling the realization dawn on me was an experience of its own. And then there's the ending. The ending, both endings, had a similar effect on me, but to a more haunting degree. Choosing Mael's ending results in Lumiere becoming a gilded cage for a Verso that's being kept alive against his will. A world where Mael gets to feel happy, at the cost of never learning to deal with her grief enough to just move on from it. And then choosing Verso's ending results in Lumiere dying. You literally are forced to make a choice about how you want this story, this world, to continue or end. There's no in between and there's no going back, so to speak. For me, whichever ending I chose, it was hard to go back to Lumiere and keep it existing as it was pre-decision without attaching either grim potential fate to it. Returning to its pre-decision state is, on a meta level, almost like Mael preserving Lumiere in the way that she wishes. For me, the knowing too much about how the world could end up either way makes me feel like playing it again or prolonging the pre-decision state is like delaying the inevitable. Some of you might think that I feel this less with Verso's ending since it's often considered to be the quote-unquote good ending, but even that ending leaves something to be grieved. Knowing how this ends for me pretty much changes the undertone of the entire world's existence, much like how the ending of Act 2 did. Maybe you're thinking, it's not that serious, but Lumiere is such a beautifully created world that makes players get attached to it. Through its characters, its creatures, its aesthetics, its music, and its meanings, and the bosses you defeated along the way. We're not just attached, we're invested. If only there were a way for Lumiere to continue existing innocently, as a blessing and not a curse, or as a form of hopeful creation instead of desperate escapism, but that's not what the writers intended. Instead, we get either discomfort or loss. Before knowing the truth of the canvas world and its eventual fate, it was easy to revel in the characters' victories and discoveries. Going through that again, knowing what we know now, will always be at least a little bit sad and at worst quite hollow. To try to purify that experience again for a replay would involve suspending the disbelief, which I think the strength and impact of Clair Obscur's writing makes it impossible to do. I've heard people say, if I could play X game again for the first time, I would. They don't say, if I could play X game again, I would. It's for the first time. Fresh eyes, fresh mind, and no idea of what's to come. Oh, to have that again for Clair Obscur, Expedition 33. On a more personal note, the other reason I have for not wanting to replay the game is simply that it's so heavy now that I know what it's about. This game has a lot of commentary on a lot of things, such as art, creation, creators, escapism, relationships, family, and I'm sure many more that people have dissected through the hundreds of video essays out there. But we can all agree that its central theme and conflict is the main character's grief. You don't realize this until maybe the latter half of the story, or halfway through Act 2, you start to get a sense of what these characters are hiding. Until then, it's this adventure, this expedition into the unknown, to save your people, to do as much as you can for those who come after. And sure, maybe it still is, especially at the start, but replaying the game with the understanding of its central themes and meta-commentary will likely result in me analyzing and psychoanalyzing everything from start to finish, especially because it's so good at that. Grief bleeds through every aspect and arc of the game. Grief is literally painted into the world as renditions of memories that the original Verso created, but the paintress wants to preserve. And like I said earlier, it makes the players grieve in real time too. The way the characters are written so well for us to get attached to them and then kill them off. First with Sophie, and how we grieve her through Gustave. Then with Gustave, and how we experience Maël's grief again and again throughout Act 2, and how that never really fades. Then we grieve Lumiere as it's reduced to nothingness at the end of Act 2. It's tragic as well when we get to Alicia's epilogue section because we identify her as Maël, who we've also learned all about throughout the entirety of the game and became attached to. Here we see her as a shell of a person, which is so different from the Maël we know, who's rebellious and so full of life. And then, you know, the endings, which as we established earlier, are both pretty difficult truths to face. Every death, every ending in Clair Obscur was, at least to me, unexpected. The game makes us feel the weight of each death to its fullest and reminds me that art reflects life reflects art. Most of us live every day assuming that we'll wake up the next morning. That in itself is like having our own plot armor the way most of us assumed Gustave would have. Expedition 33 reminds us that we can't take that for granted. And after the death happens, replaying it, just like revisiting memories with a loved one that's passed, no matter how happy the memories are, will be melancholy. Such is the effect of grief. It taints what was once pure. If you made it this far into the video, hey everyone, it's Sevy, and thanks for watching. I don't usually make this kind of content, but I really love this game and had a lot of feelings about it, hence this. Let me know in the comments if you played Expedition 33 and your feelings about it. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you soon. Take care.